We're turning now to fintech, and Quest's tap to phone solution has received the green light from AusPayNet. The solution is the first of its kind here at home, and to tell us more is CEO Jan Mason. Hi, Jan.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Congrats on this. Now tell us a little bit about what your product does and how it works.
Simplistically, it basically takes the software that currently sits in a current, what we know as an EFTPOS terminal or a card acceptance device, and we've integrated that into a phone or an Android device. So instead of having a separate piece of hardware that you would see in all retail shops at the moment, you can actually download the software onto a phone and take payments on the phone.
I love that you've broken it down for us, Jan, particularly in simple terms, as it can be quite a complicated tech solution. Tell us, how long have you been working on this project?
Probably about the last 2 years. Payments and technology and payments and software it's not easy. The thing that we've done, which is a lot different to some of the other solutions around the world, is that we have enabled PIN on the device as well. So that means you can actually not only tap your card, but you can also put a PIN in for high value transactions. So it sort of opens the use cases for the solution to not just micro or SME businesses who are taking transactions under the $100, but it also opens it up for retailers who perhaps have higher value transactions without having to have an extra piece of hardware.
So now that you've got this approval, what's the next step for you guys? Is it hell for leather in terms of rollout with everyone you can find? How do you ramp up at this point?
So we're talking to, obviously, not only the domestic banks, because like a terminal, it has to have a merchant facility that sits behind it. So we're talking to, obviously, the domestic banks here, but it's also received an awful lot of interest from international banks from all around the world, from South America to Asia to Europe to the UK. So we've commenced discussions with all of those financial institutions with a view to providing the software to them. The difference between exporting software and exporting hardware, as you can appreciate, we make obviously terminals, EFTPOS terminals. To sell those internationally, it's a lot harder because you're shipping software, shipping hardware. You have to actually work through repair cycles and all of those sorts of things. Whereas with software, it's a much easier way to expand into those markets.
Now, tell us as well, the process with AusPayNet, we've heard from some founders, regulation is never a particularly easy thing to go about and do, and you've sort of just answered a little bit there. How long was this particular process, and where do you see it being, when you do expand globally, where do you see it being your biggest challenge?
The process with AusPayNet was probably started in about June, I suppose. So it's been a 6-month process. We appreciate the regulatory and why the AusPayNet approval is required. The payment systems, regardless of how innovative you can be, the payment system has to maintain a level of security, and it has to maintain the confidence of not only the merchants but also the consumers, that the consumers need to know that they can use something that is not going to all of a sudden turn a purchase into a refund or vice versa. So that was a sort of, it was a process that we had to go through. Mind you, we have already been through the other lab, the security labs as well, to look at the security of the system. So we have gone through AusPayNet. It was not an arduous task. It was something that had to be done, and we're very pleased that AusPayNet have done that evaluation of it. worldwide, there are probably other regulatory bodies that will need to sort of look at the tech as well. However, because AusPayNet is just so highly regarded throughout the world, then I think that's a big step towards that.
Jan, it strikes me that you have massive potential with micro businesses, and then globally, of course, everyone who's a sole trader in so many countries around the world can now run their business in terms of funds and payment off an Android phone. Your eyes must light up with the incredible possibility around the technology that you guys have developed. How long before you can take over the world?
We hope to have it rolled out in Australia in the next 6 months. Which what we do here is not in any way tied to what we might do overseas. The other thing to know is that the use case for this is it's not only your micro SME business. Because it works on an Android device, it doesn't necessarily have to be a mobile phone. It can be a handheld device that you probably see some of the corporates using for stock taking and those sorts of things. That can also have the payment capability put onto it, which means that, you know, some of the larger retailers are obviously looking at it. So for queue busting, especially in COVID world, where you don't want a whole lot of people standing in a line queuing to get out of a checkout, you want to sort of space them out, and you can do sort of in-aisle purchases and those sorts of things. So the use case for the solution is wide and varied.
Well, it sounds like an incredible innovation. I'm going to be fascinated to see how it rolls out. But in the meantime, Jan Mason from Quest Payments, thanks so much for joining us on Startup Daily. And again, congratulations on getting that authorisation. And may you thrive and prosper, and we see it in local small businesses soon, and bigger ones, and our supermarkets.
Yes. So do we. And thank you very much for having me. Thank you.